Okay, influencing others towards a goal. We've talked about towards a goal. We've talked about influencing. The last thing is others. I've obviously already alluded to this. I do not believe in this idea of like you lead yourself or something like that. I mean, there's like aspects where that analogy kind of works, but leaders to me fundamentally have followers, and they don't aren't necessarily just the people on your team that you're a leader of. They are, like I said before, all the people around you. They're your peers, they're your stakeholders, they're your team. If no one is following you, you aren't leading. You can still go do great things. You can still follow you and go do some stuff as an individual contributor, and that can have a positive impact. Nothing wrong with that. But if you're leading, others are following. And if no one's following, that means you're not actually leading. And in non-coercive environments, which hopefully game dev is more of than not, trust is the foundation by which you will gain followers. People follow leaders they trust. If they don't trust you, they'll give lip service to whatever you can command through authority and position. But that's all you'll get. You'll get lip service. You'll get compliance and not support. Okay, so why does no one really follow you in game dev? First thing I see a lot. Well, it's because I got this role and title. They have to follow me. And as I was just saying, there's truth in that to some extent, but it's superficial. You will get the begrudging compliance. You need support. And you will not get support if you just try to throw around your title or role and say, this is what we're going to do because I'm in charge. It's not going to go well for you long term. I'm not saying, there's no time to be decisive, but man, if people trust you, when you're just, then you have the opportunity to be decisive and they'll go like, look, we trust him. Like, this is a tough one, but we can get behind him. We'll follow him or her wherever they're leading. You need to be thinking about the order in which you do things. The role in the title, yes, gives you authority, but leadership will come through the trust, and when it comes to actually having followers that support you. Second reason why no one really follows you in game dev. You thought the role was all about the processes, the systems, and the reports. You didn't realize it was primarily about people. If you're in a leadership role, it is about people. This is a very understandable mistake, by the way. People get obsessed with the processes and the systems and the reports. Too much of our industry seems to prioritize the former over the latter. They tend to focus heavily and incentivize people just taking care of like Favreau or Jira or the work system and the blah, 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 and not really thinking about the people very much. But leaders have others behind them, and others are people, not systems. Third thing, kind of a weird one, you never ask people to follow you. So one of the reasons why no one really follows you in game dev, you never ask them to. Maybe because of insecurity, your own overwork, that gets the better of you. You went solo instead of asking for help. And perhaps people would have been very willing to support you, but you just tried to do it alone. And if you just said like, hey, I'm trying to do this really hard thing, can anybody help me? People around you, peers, people on your team might have been like, oh, I can help you do that. And you might be shocked at how much support you might get, especially if they can see how that relates to getting to a goal and they trust you. Another one, though, is subtly different. You might have asked, but they might not have realized you asked. You failed to communicate well with them. A huge part of a leader's job is communicating. It's a core part of this whole influencing thing. If you're doing it badly or not doing it at all, you're not going to have anybody following you. So you need to be good. You need to figure out if you're communicating well, and then you need to be willing to ask, and now you might actually have people following you. If you did not build trust with people, I've covered this already a couple times, or were not trustworthy in their eyes, they're not going to follow you. They will only follow you as far as fear takes them. And especially if you've broken trust with them, you're going to have even more of a challenge. I want to talk about two stories of myself in this space of others and bringing others along when I was trying to go to a better place. So I've been on the champion team on League of Legends and Riot Games a couple of times in my career. In 2012 and again in 2015. In 2012, I did this massive exercise of building a work system. I'm not kidding. I woke up at 3 a.m. one day and I was like, I think I can make this better. And then I wrote down a bunch of stuff and I started implementing it. And it was so perfect in theory. In practice, it was terrible. And a lot of people there tried to tell me that. And I was like, no, but it's going to work great. And I didn't know what I was doing. I say that because it's genuinely true. Not because I want to undercut my own authority here. But even once I rolled it out, those people who were saying it wasn't going to work, they complied because I had the authority and position to make the change. And they respected that enough to follow. But the system was awful. And I don't even think they gave me lip service. I think they really tried. They tried to support me in it because they were really great people. And I just the system just pummeled them. Anyway, soon after, I don't know if it was related to this or not, didn't seem to be, but I wouldn't be shocked. I was moved off that team onto a different team. um, and they reverted all the changes almost right away. They were just like, okay, this system is really bad. A great example, by the way, of when you're leading but not actually driving change is if you are the link, the only thing, the single point of failure where if you go, so does the change. That means you're not finding a way to permanently positively influence the org. I went away. I got a few years of experience under my belt. I learned a lot. I realized all the mistakes I'd made in that thing, or some of them at least. Still learning about them actually as I go. But in 2015, went back to that same team. It changed a lot. And similarly, they had some issues in their work system. I changed that work system, and this time I'm pretty confident it was for the better. I think I knew a lot more about it. It actually was improving it quite a bit. But I never brought anyone along with me. And I had this great conversation with a designer named Jordan, really cool guy. And he basically pulled me aside one time. He's like, Ben, I see you trying to drive all this change. I'm paraphrasing all this, but he told me he wanted to trust me. But I never explained why I was doing anything and where I was going, and it made it really hard to support me because he was viewed as an influential leader, informal or not, inside of that team. And I realized I hadn't brought anybody along. I was just making changes and then telling everybody what they had to do. I wasn't explaining to them why, and I wasn't giving them the meaningful reasons behind the things I was changing. I did adjust this after the conversation. I think it took me some time, but I adjusted this, and it probably was pretty bumpy at first. The interesting thing is the changes I made did become a better way for the team to work, and they continued using that way of working even after I had gone. So that was really cool to see. That was an example of, again, I did have a positive influence, but I was getting in my way partially because I just wasn't asking. Okay, I want to talk about servant leadership, how you gain real followers. When people think of servant leader, they often think of a purely supportive person, just a leader who asks the team what they want and provides, tries to do that for them and is a coach and is guiding and supporting and encouraging from behind while the team goes and does the hard thing. I think this is a misapprehension of what a servant leader is. It's a misunderstood phrase. And I'm going to give a military analogy for this. I had some time in the military, so you'll have to apologize. I apologize for all the military analogies. If I was an officer and I'm leading my combat unit and we're like walking through the woods or something, and we start taking fire. Everybody in the Army would know, we start taking fire, you get down. It makes you harder to hit, and it's a good response when you don't know what else to do. Like, we start taking fire, let's get down. If you think you know where the fire is coming from, you start returning fire. But one of the things that the leaders of that space, and it could be anybody, but especially that officer, might be thinking is this is a really bad spot to be taking fire. They've got us in a kill zone. What you are supposed to do then is stand up and tell your unit, we got to move. And you might say, come with me. You might say, go. You might say, move east. You might say, charge the enemy. There's a lot of different things you might do. But you need to get your unit out of that dangerous spot that they're in because you know that staying there is bad. This, to me, is a great example of a servant leader. And a lot of people are like, wait a minute. No. That's the guy who stands up and says, go that way. How is that a servant leader? Because that person is serving their unit. They're serving the mission. They're serving everyone. They're serving themselves last. That is what a servant leader does. They serve through leadership. It's not serving instead of leading. It's serving through leading. They have a rank and an authority and ideally a respect and a trust from the people that are following them that allows them to serve through leading. So be careful when you hear the term servant leadership if people say well, he's not really being a servant leader or she's not really doing a good job of servant leadership. Make sure that they aren't just thinking you should just be supporting. You still need to be leading. And when you do that, you connect the goal, the team, and yourself while taking care of yourself last. If you do this, if you actually go to work as a leader, formal or informal, and you do this every day, you constantly, there's times to do the coaching thing, there's times to do the supporting thing and the asking what you can do thing. All that's great. But you're also willing to make calls and be decisive in the interests of the people that you serve through leadership. You will become somebody that people trust. They will follow you. Last thing I'll talk about for gaining real followers, care. You have to care. You care about the goal, for sure. You care about the people you lead, for sure. and you care about those things, as in the servant leadership example, more than you care about yourself, if you act that out every day, and you can use your word care, compassion, love, kindness, whatever it is, if you model that and you engage with your teams with that approach, they will follow you. You will have people who have your back as you go in a direction. And by the way, when I say you care more about them than you care about yourself, I don't mean you burn yourself out or don't take care of yourself at all. A burned out, fried, exhausted you is not useful to the team. It's not going to help them reach their goals. So you do have to take care of yourself, but the point of taking care of yourself in that work context is so that you can take care of them. That, again, is both you demonstrating care and you being a good servant leader. Combine that with the things we talked about earlier, the humility, the diplomacy, the courage. You'd be amazed at the positive changes you can make.